علمني ما ينفعني وانفعني بما علمتني وزدني علما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. During every night of the last 10 nights of Ramadan, Dr. Umar Suleiman and Sheikh Yasir Birjas held a midnight majlis in which they discussed and spoke with reference to a book written by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah regarding the remembrance of Allah. Inshallah, I am planning to bring the summary of the discussions to you in a series titled Dhikr, Remembrance of Allah. May Allah be pleased with and accept it from me, and may this be a source in imparting useful knowledge to all of us. Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. What is dhikr in the life of a believer? Dhikr is the heart of your spiritual life as a believer. Dhikr is a type of protection, a means of calming the heart and removing all forms of harm. Dhikr is actual solution to our lives. Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innal khulub. Certainly, undoubtedly, by the dhikr of Allah, the heart finds peace and tranquility. The dhikr grounds me and allows me to ward off the shaitan. Healing through dhikr. When scared, we suddenly remind ourselves of all the adhkar. That's a very needed moment of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That kind of feeling, same as when we are scared, should always be with the believer in every situation of his or her life. How much dhikr do you do every day? What is the status of dhikr in your mind? We have to ask ourselves this question. Where should be the effect of the dhikr? Of course, in the heart. It is ibadah in its own right. وَلَذِكْرُ akbar. The remembrance of Allah is the greatest. Sadly, our dhikr has become a ritual just by counting on fingers or tasbih, and we feel that we have accomplished it. Why is dhikr so central in our life, and how should we do it right? There are 5 major things you have to remember to have a shield so that the shaitan doesn't take you away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where are you going to put your shield? In your heart, the place where shaitan attacks you. The 5 major things are Tawheed, the absolute belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next is Salah. The next is Siyam, fasting. The next is Sadaqah, and the next is Dhikr. Dhikr is the start that brings joy and happiness to the believer. Recognize and accept that you are a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be ready to submit. Our ultimate goal is to find happiness in this dunya and the akhirah. There are 3 things that are important for this purpose. Firstly, when you are bestowed with favors, you give thanks. How do you give thanks? By recognizing His favors and blessings upon you, and then show your gratefulness through action. What action would you take? Help others and be a blessing for others. Secondly, when you are put to trial, you persevere. You have sabr. You're going to be tried. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't make that a secret. So be patient. Have sabr, self-control. How? Recall the trials faced by Yasir Razallahu ta'ala anhu and his family in the early days of Islam when he was tortured by the disbelievers. He was chained in the hot sun, the whips. The Prophet ﷺ walks by, and all you can hear him say, "Have sabr, O family of Yasir, you have been promised Jannah." Sumayya Razallahu Ta'ala Anha, the first woman martyr, her torture was most brutal. The weakest of them, who had the courage to spit back at Abu Jahl, they didn't say anything bad, just took it. The statement Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un is a gift to this ummah. The earlier prophets did not have this. I am always for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let him do with me what he wills, and Ya Allah, do what is with me and for me what you will, because it is all yours in the first place. That is self-control and gratitude together. Our life and our ibadah is based on two major pillars, shukr and sabr. If anyone exercises these two rules, all the calamities change into blessings for them. How can you pray? How will you practice sabr? Control yourself from being angry over what has been decreed. Control your tongue from complaining. Complain to Allah, not complain about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you complain to people, they already have their own issues and you are burning them with your issues. Or someone who doesn't like you is happy that you're going through misery. You complain about the one who has mercy upon you, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the one who has no mercy upon you, that is the people. There's always room for seeking counsel and advice, so please take advantage of this. Thirdly, when sinful, you seek forgiveness. We always make mistakes. We sin continuously and consistently seek forgiveness. The slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always be fluctuating between these three levels. Every one of us will have a share of all these things. Sabr and shukr are like the muscles, like push and pull. Shukr is like pushing forward. Sabr is pulling, that means holding back. Shukr is sabr. You are patient with your desires and saying that I am happy with what I have in good times. And sabr is shukr in bad times, because I'm still grateful with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed even one of all these three things, then everything will be completely out of order. If He didn't bless us with any good things, we will face disaster, tests, trials, and challenges. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us blessings in this life to enjoy. He didn't have to give families, companions, hobbies, leisure, food, and what we like, etc. He could have just created us for the test, for the battle. Don't do this, don't do that, etc., etc. Don't sin. Then don't sin and you will go to Jannah. Imagine how miserable our existence would be. If you are tested, you are patient. You have sabr. If we remove the tests and trials, we think it would be a good life. Isn't it so? Then who would strive for Jannah? Who would strive for faith, Iman? Who would turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And who would even listen to the messengers? It has been found that human beings cling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only when tested. The majority of people who enter Jannah are those who are continuously tested, like the poor, the oppressed, the downtrodden, etc. We would love to not being tested now, but it would make things miserable. The next is, if he sins, he seeks forgiveness. If there was no sense of accountability, no sense of committing any type of sins, what does the Prophet ﷺ narrate? If you were not to sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace you with those who sin and ask forgiveness so that He could forgive them. If you don't sin, then you would be angels. Which of these three which I mentioned above are neglected the most? Is it being grateful or having sabr or seeking forgiveness? The answer is sabr, self-control. It is the most difficult to find people with self-control. It is such a rarity. We never meet someone who is patient but not grateful. But we find people who are grateful but not patient. If the self-control is done as an act of ibadah, not for the sake of adaptation or loss. Self-control due to adaptation to loss, they will still hold grudge in their hearts. They wait for moments to take revenge. Self-control as an act of ibadah. I can retaliate. I can take revenge, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive you and then you move on. Not because you deserve it, but you deserve to be forgiven. So be patient with ihsan. We have this ghafla, heedlessness. Combating heedlessness with dhikr. How can we establish this mindfulness while doing dhikr? Obviously, there is dhikr that you make as you go throughout the day, and it is very difficult for you to be in mindful zikr because you're busy with other things. That type of zikr where the tongue is just moving is better than silence, and silence is better than speaking evil. The worst thing you could do is use your tongue for evil. Next thing, at least just be silent. Better than silence is that the tongue is moving with the dhikr of Allah, and better than that is mindful dhikr. Mindless dhikr is better than silence, like silence is better than sin. Also, mindless dhikr that rolls out of your tongue protects you. It is awkward to go from dhikr to curse, to use some curse word or to backbite. Fitra of the tongue will not allow you to do dhikr. Mindful dhikr, even for a few minutes, will protect your eyes, your heart, mind. You have to have a portion of that every day. Otherwise, you cannot survive. Even looking around you, the nature, and reminding yourself about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a type of dhikr. Example, people look at the sun and say, wow, how beautiful it is. We look at the sun and say, Subhanallah, what a creation of Allah. When praying and after praying, during tasbih, make these moments meaningful. Do not just parrot the words of dhikr. These are the slaves that shaitan has no control over. Allah tells the shayateen, Inna ibadi laysa laka alayhim sultan. Verily, my slaves, you have no control over them. When Iblis understood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was not going to give up his slaves just like that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give us up without giving us the armor, the shield, the protection, the readiness, the incentives, so that we don't become victims of the shaitan. Islam itself is a sign of Allah's love. All these are the signs of Allah's love, even the punishments and the rewards. Allah tells Iblis, no, you don't just take the humanity now, just because Adam alayhi salam was the one man was affected, don't think everyone is going to be affected. Iblis understood this. He knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to give him control over us. That is when he said, so I have to delude them. Delude them from who? Delude them from your Rabb, the Kareem, the generous. I have to mess them up. I have to confuse them. If they know how much the Rabb loves them, how much the Rabb has given them, the shaitan says, I have no chance with them. The only ones that I won't be able to get away from you, O Allah, are your sincere slaves, because they already know who you are and they already decided that they are going to entrust themselves to you no matter what happens. You have control over them and they have forsaken their own control over their circumstances to you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The characteristic of becoming an abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not achieved through just worshipping. Not through just worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but with sincerity. Some people are able to do ibadah, but they want to worship Him only when things are good. When bad things happen, they forsake their ibadah. So they were never really abd of ibadah, or abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They changed their sincerity based on circumstances. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us in constantly making dhikr in His remembrance. We will continue on this in the next presentation, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.